Goodbye, 1025.
Yeah, let me.
On our last day here. They're gonna play some slots. I'm gonna play in the poker room here, see what stakes they have. So let's jump in. So I sit down at a 1-3 game in Treasure Island. There are only 2 tables running, and one of them is a tournament table. So our table is the only cash game table available. We're playing 10-handed. I buy in for 400. The max is 500, but I cover almost everyone at the table except for the player to my direct left, who seems like a pretty good player. He's sitting on a stack of maybe 650 or so. First interesting hand of the session, I look down at pocket deuces in under the gun +1. I open it up to 8, forgetting for a second that it was 1-3 instead of 1-2, so kind of a misclick. But anyways, the low jack and the big blind call. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which comes queen, jack, queen, rainbow, and then something super unexpected happened.
Yeah. Oh, how's it going, dude?
So I run into someone who went to the same high school and is currently going to the same college as I am, UC Irvine, and I believe he went to the same middle school as well, if I'm not mistaken. I wouldn't say we're necessarily friends, but we knew each other, and it's kind of a surprise seeing someone from Orange County in Vegas at the same time I am in a poker room, especially because there isn't much of a poker community in Orange County in general, so kind of cool seeing someone I knew. Anyways, it turns out he's on the list for the 1-3 game, and as I mentioned before, our table is the only 1-3 table running in the room, so chances are we're going to be playing at the same table. Anyways, back to the hand.
Sorry. Check to you. 3 players? Yeah.
The big blind checks it over to me. I suppose I could check here given that I have some showdown value, but there aren't really any good turn cards for me besides the deuce, of course, so I take a stab at the pot and bet 15, and both players fold. In this next hand, I'm in the big blind and I look down at my least favorite hand in poker that I still like seeing, pocket jacks. The under the gun +1 player raises to 6 and the hijack 3 bets to 31. I don't want to play jacks out of position, so I put in a 4 bet to 80 and everyone folds. So happy to take that down pre-flop. I don't want to see too many folds from jacks.
That's why. I just worried.
Thank you.
In this next hand, I'm on the button with King 10 offsuit. The low jack raises to 6, I call, and the big blind calls. 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace, queen, 7, 2 hearts. The big blind checks and the low jack c-bets to 12. I think there's a great hand to see a turn card with. There are plenty of turn cards that are good for me. Any jack will give me the nut straight. Even the jack of hearts isn't a bad card because I am redrawing to the nut flush, and any heart is good as well. So plenty of cards that can allow me to continue on the turn and possibly even put in a bet if he checks or even raise if he bets again. So I decide to call, the big blind folds, so heads up to a turn, which comes the 9 of diamonds, no help. The low jack continues betting again, and this time bets 30, so I make the fold, no reason to continue here, and he shows pocket queens for a flop set. In this next hand, I look down at ace-4 offsuit in the big blind. Not planning on playing this, but there are 2 limps and the small blind complete, so I check my option. The flop comes 3, 7, 10, 2 spades. Small blind checks, I check, and action checks through. The turn brings a 5 of diamonds, so we now have a double gutter. The small blind checks, and I decide to take a stab at the pot. I bet 6, and everyone folds except for the button. The river brings the queen of hearts, so all flush draws miss. I'm putting my opponent on either a flush draw or maybe some kind of small pair. It's hard to put her on a 10 because she probably would have bet that after everyone checked 2 on the flop. So I put her out a bet of 15, hoping that she has a flush draw or will fold a small pair, and she quickly folds, so took it down with ace high. In this next hand, I'm in the small blind with pocket 3s. Action folds to me, and I min-raised to 6. I probably meant to 3 exit to 9, but once again, there were times during the session where I forgot I was playing 1-3. Not too worried about playing this post-flop. It's pretty easy. If you flop a set, continue. If you don't, no big deal. But I'd rather take it down pre-flop, so I give a little speech to the big blind. Once again, this is the player I mentioned at the beginning who seemed like he was a pretty decent player. He also looked and sounded a lot like Jason Somerville. So I give him a little speech. I ask him if he wants a hint.
You want a hint?
And he 3-bets me to 25. So pretty big 3-bet, not going anywhere just yet. Against almost all the other players, I would probably fold, but we're both playing pretty deep stack, so if I flop a set, I'm getting pretty good in blind odds, so I make the call, hoping to flop a set. Spoiler alert, didn't flop a set. I flopped a book. So pretty great situation here. I check it over to him, no reason to bet here, and he checks it back. So heads up to a turn card, which brings the jack of diamonds. So there are now 2 flush draws on the board. I check it over to him again, and this time he puts in an overbet and bets 55. No reason to raise here. I ask for a count just to Hollywood for a little bit, then I pretend to think for a while and ultimately make the call. The river brings the king of spades, completing the flush draw. I think it's a pretty bad card for me actually because it kills action. Not too sure about my line here, but I decide to check. I'm super confident that I have the best hand here, but not sure if I can get some value out of him if I bet. I just think betting in this spot looks way too strong after I call an overbet on the turn. It does also look like I could have some kind of jack. So if he was bluffing on the turn, I'm giving him an opportunity to push me off a jack. So hoping for a bet here. He checks his cards and then decides to check back. So not getting any more value. I show my hand and of course it's good. Not too sure about my line here. I guess I could have considered betting the river. I could be leading out on the river with maybe a hand that has 1 spade in it as a bluff, or maybe missed diamond draws, but other than that, I just think calling the turn bet looks too strong already, and if I lead out on the river, it just looks super strong, so I don't know. Let me know if you have any thoughts on that. In this next hand, I'm in the low jack with a6 of spades. There's a limp, I raise it up to 12, and the small blind and the limp recall. So 3 ways to a flop, which comes 3, 4, ace, 2 diamonds. So we flop top pair, not too much of a kicker. The small blind seems to have been playing her hands pretty face up. I don't remember seeing any of her hands at showdown, but she would either check fold most of the time or lead out of position when she had the chance. So in this hand, she donk bets and puts out a bet of 17. The under the gun plus 2 player folds and I make the call. The turn brings the queen of hearts. She puts out another bet, this time making it 20. That could easily be against a better ace, but can't go anywhere yet. So I call the 20. And the river's a pretty good card for us. It's a 3, so now we're chopping with all the aces that she could realistically have. She's probably 3-betting ace queen or ace king pre-flop, so not too worried about those. Anyway, she continues betting, and this time bets 25. Tiny bet, not going anywhere, so I call, and she shows ace 5 of hearts. So it turns out 3 on the river wasn't a good card for us. We were beating her the entire time, and I'm pretty sure I would call most other rivers with her sizing, so kind of an unfortunate run out, but happy to chop rather than be against a better ace. Pretty soon afterwards, I'm up against the same player. I'm in the hijack with pocket kings. I happened to be in a casual conversation with the player next to me who looked and sounded like Jason Somerville, and I was telling him exactly that.
I wouldn't have minded that. You could have played ball. I kind of wanted to see that.
Okay hand, but
I had a really shitty hand, but...
You know who you remind me of? You remind me of Jason Somerville. You know Jason Somerville? You sound like him and you look kind of like him. Yeah? Yeah?
That's it.
He sounds like him.
He's saying you're a crusher. That's what he's saying.
Oh, thank you. I don't know who that is though. Jason Somerville.
I could see some little bit.
You see it, right?
A little bit.
He sounds like him.
Yeah.
So being in a casual conversation, being dealt pocket kings, and being able to continue having a casual conversation, definitely a great way to disguise my hand. I raise it up to 12, and the same player from the last hand, who's now in the big blind, makes the call. So heads up to the flop, which comes jack 10 ace, all spades. Probably one of the worst flops for pocket kings, especially considering I'm not holding a spade. Anyways, the big blind checks to me. I put out a C bet of 15 and the big blind calls. So the turn brings a 5 of clubs. The big blind checks. I check it back for pot control. I don't want to build a huge pot with marginal hand in the spot. The river is the 8 of hearts, pretty much a blank. And now the big blind leads out and bets 16. It looks kind of bluffy. Once again, this player was playing her hands pretty face up, or at least it seemed that way. So I'm pretty sure she would have let out the flop and the turn and the river if she had an ace or any flush. So this isn't a great spot, but the price is really good and I have pocket kings, so pretty much only beating a bluff. I make the call reluctantly. And she shows queen jack for pair of jacks that she turned into a bluff. So kind of a scary flop. Really happy to win it with the kings this time.
King.
One last interesting hand I played in this session. I kind of put myself in a 6 spot. So I'm in under the gun plus 3. Remember, there's a 10-handed game, so under the gun plus 3 isn't the same as the low jack. And I have jack 8 of hearts. Not a hand you want to be playing too often, but I thought it looks good at the time, so I raised it up to 8. Once again, forgetting that it's a 1-3 game, so I made a raise, thinking it was 1-2 for a second. And I get called by the cutoff, who is the same guy I mentioned earlier, who went to the same middle school, high school, and currently goes to the same college as I go to. A player left a while ago, so he got that seat, and we didn't really get tangled up in any hands, except for one where he double-barreled, and I folded. So not much history with him. I hadn't seen him show down a hand yet. Anyways, heads up to the flop, which comes 5, 8, 9, 2 clubs. Pretty clear c-bet here, so I lead out for $12, and he quickly puts in a raise to 30. Not going anywhere yet. He could have plenty of club draws, straight draws, so I make the call. So off to a turn card, which brings the queen of diamonds. It shouldn't have hit too much in his range. I feel like ace queen and king queen with 3-bet pre-flop Queen Jack offsuit might 3-bet pre-flop, but he could also have Queen 10 suited or Queen Jack suited, and definitely not going to discount Queen Jack off. But otherwise, it's a pretty safe turn card aside from Jack 10 getting there. Anyways, I check it over to him. He continues betting and puts down a bet of 55. He doesn't have too much left behind, only about 100 or so. So if I call here, I'm kind of committing myself to the pot, and not sure if I want to do that with a marginal hand like Jack 8. So I think about it for quite some time and decide to make a call. And this is where I think I made the biggest mistake. The river rings a 9 of hearts, pretty much a blank considering his range. If he had me beat before, he still should have me beat now, and if I was beating him, then I should still have him beat now. So I check it over to him, and as I should have expected and been prepared for, he shoves for 102 total. So this is exactly why I should have had a plan on the turn when I called his bet, because he's almost always shoving the river unless he has a middling hand with showdown value like Queen 10 or Queen Jack. So I think for a long time and go through his range, try to think about what hands he can have for value and what he can have as bluffs. He could obviously have all of his club draws, possibly a hand like 10-7 suited for an open-ender. Value hands he could have include pocket 5s, which there are only 3 combos of. He could have pocket 8s, but there's only 1 combo of those since I have an 8 in my hand. Jack 10 as well, but I'm also blocking Jack 10. So I think in hindsight, if I call the turn, I just have to call the river when it comes a brick like a 9 or a 5. I'm not exactly sure what I would do if the river came an offsuit Jack, because then there's only 1 to a straight, but I do have 2 pair. Once again, biggest mistake was on the turn. Not in that I called the turn, but that I called the turn without having a plan for the various river cards that could come. Put myself in a tough spot with Jack 8. Probably shouldn't have raised it pre-flop, so now I'm just playing a guessing game. So I think about it for a bit more, and in the end, I eventually decide to toss in a call. And after I do so, he says you're good. I show my hand and he mucks. So not too happy about my line pre-flop, and not happy about the fact that I called the turn without having a plan, but it worked out well for me this time, and we caught a huge bluff, won a huge pot after already being up a bunch, and stacked my friend in only the second hand that we played.
Good bet. You made me think. We'll play when we're back in OC, yeah?
Anyways, that was the last big hand I decided to play during the session. Just wrapped up the session with a huge hand. Hi, how are you?
Thanks, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
5, 6, 75, 85, 90, 99, 699. Do you have a dollar?
So in for 400, out for $706. I actually kept 7 chips, 1 for myself and 6 for my friends, and then I gave the cashier another $1 to make it $700 even. So technically cashed out for a little less, but kept a few souvenirs for myself. So great session to end off the Vegas trip, and a pretty sick bluff catch to go along with it. Although I'm not a huge fan of how I played pre-flop. Other than that, worked out pretty well. Goodbye, Treasure Island. Back with Visal and Alyssa. About to go back. How was Vegas, guys?
Cool. Yeah, freaking awesome. That was fun.
All right, on our way home, we have a long drive home.